Hello and welcome to another episode of Webflow and Code, where I teach you the underlying code you're writing in Webflow. We are going back to basics, baby. We're dipping back into the Forms Masterclass, which is a series that I did years ago, which sort of broke the channel. The point is, it did very well. And I recently was working on a website where we touched on the Recapcha, and we needed a way to understand whether the Recapcha had been solved through JavaScript. And basically, there's a really interesting way you do this, and it sort of made sense to put it in the Forms Masterclass series. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through with setting up a Recapcha. There's plenty of information on how to do this online, so I'll leave timestamps below so you can kind of skip ahead to the JavaScript part of things. But just so this episode is complete and end-to-end, we'll do that. And then we'll look into how to verify someone has filled out or accepted or completed the Recapcha before then submitting the form. But before we jump in, I've got a Patreon where you can support the channel and support me and all this content and stuff like that. It's patreon.com/0x5am5. Really appreciate it if you like this video or subscribe to the channel if this is not your first time here. Without further ado, let's get on with Recapcha inside of Webflow. So let's just go through a site that I've been working on. When you go to this website, basically a pop-up will show up. Ideally, what I want to happen is you'd fill out the form, submit, and the pop-up would close and a cookie would get set so that the pop-up doesn't show up again. What was happening is that it was still closing and setting that cookie, even though someone hadn't clicked this box. So I needed to do another check before closing and setting the cookie that would just check whether this was valid or not. So let's start with actually creating a Recapcha. So if you go to google.com/Recapcha, you can log in, you can create a new Recapcha thing. And we basically want to do the Recapcha version 2. Let me know if you want to do a Recapcha version 3, but this will need JavaScript and all the rest of it, because right now Webflow does not support Google Recapcha version 2. We've got the I'm not a robot tick box as well. This is needed. And I mean, let's name the site. I mean, let's go Samuel Gregory.com, whatever. And you want to add your domains, and you definitely want to do your Webflow domain as well. And then you want to do Samuel Gregory.com. And add that one. And these are the domains which are allowed to use this Recapcha. I think that's picked up because I've got Google Cloud. I'm sure it won't turn up for you if you don't have that. And if we click submit here, and then you've got these the site key and the secret key. And you're going to want to copy these. I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to copy that one. And under site settings forms, you want to paste those here, obviously enabling Recapcha in the process. And this should enable, under forms, the Recapcha. You'll be able to drag this into your forms. I guess it's worth saying that you can actually customize the Recapcha here there's a few different ways. You can have a dark theme, and by adding custom attributes here, dark, data theme, dark, you'll create a dark version. You can also change the size as well using data size and then say compact, which is quite handy. Take a look at what that looks like. You can kind of make it look a little bit different. Personally, not a fan of those styling options, but you do you. Let me just quickly show you the JavaScript for that. Right, so here we go. Here's our pop-up. If the pop-up's there, so we've got a close button here, which fires this close pop-up function. And we've also got a submit event here, which also calls that same function. This is checking for that cookie. If the cookie is there, then we animate the pop-up in. If it's not there, then we just make sure that we set pointer events none and opacity to 0. That's just for safety keeping. Close pop-up is a function here which basically just fades it out, and on completion of fading it out. And I use jQuery here to animate because low-key, you know, we talk about GSAP, we talk about interactions maybe not being enough, and jQuery animate is perfectly acceptable for a lot of basic animations. I can go into that if you'd like. Let me know if you're interested in a jQuery animation sort of, I don't know, lesson or something. But yeah, as I say, you can simply just put the jQuery element and animate, and it will just animate just as you expect with GSAP. So anyway, on completion, we remove the pointer events because they are set to auto when it animates in. we set that cookie, and then we allow the user to scroll. Right, that's the JavaScript, but let's really dig into exactly what I was talking about when we had the submit. So here we go. On that form, so this pop-up is that form. On the submit, we set a timeout because we just want to allow them to see that success message before it then fades away. And then we call close pop-up. So after 3 seconds, we close that call pop-up. What was happening again is that for whatever reason, the submit event still gets fired even though the reCaptcha hadn't been filled out. So how did I figure this out? What basically was quite interesting is that I looked here, and you can access through the documentation of Recaptcha, you can access the reCaptchas on the page using an ID. I didn't find any ID at all in this element here. But what I did see, which was kind of weird, is this text area. I think this is unique to Webflow. And I looked at it. If I go to console here, and you can access the current element you've got selected. If I do value, there's nothing there. And so when I check this, if I do it again, we've actually got a value. And that basically told me, oh, this text area gets set as a way of learning if the reCaptcha has been solved or not. So if we go back into my code, what I do is this, because I use a function here, if you're not familiar, these functions contain the scope of this. Arrow functions, which you might be more familiar with, if I was to say this inside of this function, it would actually be the window. But I wanted this to be the form. So you can see that inside of this, I find the G reCaptcha response as a class. Here we go. So I find that element. Actually, I don't even, we can just go .val there. And that would probably be more as a solution. And if that has a length, only then do we close that pop-up. Editing Sam here. Whether you're using native Webflow forms, which is what we're doing here, or you're submitting the form with AJAX, which is what we have been doing in the rest of the Forms Masterclass series, the process is exactly the same. You're still looking for that reCaptcha element that you've placed on the page, checking whether it's been solved, and then you allow the code to progress. I'll leave that up to you to get creative on how you might do that using the AJAX method, but just so you know that this method works both on the native form and the AJAX-submitted form. Just to recap here, you're going to create your Recaptcha version 2 with the I'm not a robot tick. You're going to get your site key and your secret key. You're going to paste them into your site settings under form and Recaptcha validation whilst turning this on. That then enables you to add a Recaptcha element inside of a form. And then within your custom code, on the form submit event, which we've touched on in the past, you're going to want to find the element that has the class G reCaptcha response. And that string that we saw is going to be only set, or only it's only got a length when the reCaptcha has been solved. And then we can do whatever we need to do. And in our case, we just have a little timeout here. And after 3 seconds, we close the pop-up, animate it out, and just set that cookie so then it doesn't show again. And okay, that was hella fun dipping into a bit of Forms Masterclass series and adding to it. If there's anything specific that you want me to go into, I'll leave links to the code down below just so that you can play around with. Ask me questions about anything that's unclear, including if you want me to do V3. But hopefully you should kind of get the picture on how to access whether the reCaptcha has been solved or not. So you can do whatever you want with JavaScript, like set a cookie as an example. Like, subscribe if you haven't already, remember my Patreon, and until next time, happy no coding.